Hey guys, tonight we're leaving behind the clamor of Olympus and descending somewhere much, much quieter. You're not climbing a mountain this time. You're slipping down into a crack in the ground. A small one. The kind of crack you wouldn't notice unless your foot falls through it. And suddenly, you're in the shadows. It smells like warm stone and wet iron. The air is still, stale, and just the tiniest bit enchanted. Torchlight flickers along slick cavern walls. Your footsteps make a soft crunch on ancient dust, the kind that's been here since before time had proper sandals. You duck under low-hanging roots, hear the slow drip of water echo off distant stone, and somewhere far off, a soft growl. Not threatening, just informative. Welcome to the Underworld. Population, everyone who's ever died. And at the center of it all is Hades. Not the fire and brimstone cartoon villain, not the snarling mad god. No, Hades, in his original, unbothered form, is the patron of silence, the master of moderation, and the guy who would really, truly prefer it if people just didn't show up unannounced. But of course, they always do. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake enough, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge a little further now, following the hum of something old and powerful. You're not quite dead, but the underworld doesn't really care about that. It lets you in anyway. And there he is. Hades. Not seated on a throne just yet. No crown. No ceremonial robes. Just a tall, pale figure standing with his brothers, Zeus and Poseidon, freshly victorious after defeating the Titans. The war is over. The sky is bruised with leftover lightning, and the three brothers stand at the edge of the world like guys who've inherited a lot of property and no idea how to split it up. Zeus takes the sky, naturally. He's loud, glowing, and practically allergic to humility. Poseidon claims the sea. He's wet, dramatic, and makes a strong case with a trident no one wants to argue with. And Hades? He ends up with what's left. The underworld. The stuff below. The land of shadows, echoes, and slowly drifting regrets. Historians still argue whether Hades truly chose his domain, or if he just didn't speak up fast enough. There's a fringe theory that suggests the eldest brother took the role out of a sense of duty, not punishment. That he actually saw value in overseeing the dead, in making sure they weren't forgotten or left wandering. But let's be honest. Nobody's racing to say, "I'll take the gloomy pit of despair, thanks." You follow Hades down for the first time. It's quiet. Very quiet. Unlike Olympus, where gossip flies like harpies and egos are larger than the mountain itself, this realm is still forming. There's no infrastructure yet. No judgment seats, no rivers of fire, no three-headed pets. Just raw space, dark and endless. The silence here isn't empty. It's full, thick, heavy like velvet. You can feel it in your bones. And somehow, Hades feels at home. See, while his brothers crave applause, storms and tsunamis, thunderbolts and sea monsters, Hades has always been a watcher, a tally keeper. He knows every star that's ever fallen and every mortal who ever whispered their final breath. He doesn't punish. He doesn't tempt. He simply accepts. It's kind of beautiful, actually, in a slightly creepy way. He starts to build, not temples or parties, but order. He creates a realm with rules. Souls will come here, all of them. Kings and thieves, poets and shepherds. And someone has to keep track. Mainstream scholars like to emphasize Hades as a god of wealth. Pluton, they called him later. Not because he owned a mansion, but because everything beneath the earth was his. Gold, silver, gems, and bones, all underground, all his. The dead become his domain, but so does everything humans dig for. You pause for a moment at a strange little cave alcove where a mushroom glows faintly. It's not magical, just bioluminescent. Hades notices too. He doesn't smile, but you can tell. He respects a fungus that minds its business and thrives in darkness. There's a quirky tidbit rarely mentioned in the big textbooks. Early cults that worshipped Hades had no statues of him. They often avoided saying his name entirely, not out of hatred, but respect. Superstition. You don't call the god of the dead casually, lest he notice you. In fact, Hades had more euphemisms than any of his siblings. The rich one, the invisible, the host of many. Ancient Greeks believed saying his real name might shorten your life, kind of like giving death your home address. You walk beside him now as he drafts the first lines of a system no mortal will escape. He's not cruel, he's not gleeful, he's just focused. Quiet gods don't waste time on vengeance. They have eternity to manage. And yet, you catch a flicker of something behind his expression. Not sadness exactly, not loneliness, just weight. The burden of being the final chapter in every story. No temples, no cheering crowds, no dramatic thunderclaps. Just the endless arrival of souls, each one thinking, hoping, maybe there's still something more. And Hades? He simply nods, points to their place, and lets them rest. Somewhere behind you, a soft splash. The first river forms. The Styx. Cold, slow, and destined to bind oaths and carry secrets. The underworld has begun, and so has he. You're still in the underworld, but the air shifts slightly now, like time has passed and something weighty is about to be decided. You follow the sound of reluctant footsteps on ancient stone, and suddenly you're no longer underground. You're perched at the edge of a divine real estate negotiation, and things are getting awkward. Zeus has called a family meeting. No snacks, no seating chart. Just three brothers standing in the silence after a war that nearly cracked the world in half. The Titans are chained, the cosmos is up for grabs, and someone has to figure out how to divvy it all up before another god throws a lightning bolt at someone's face. You watch them hesitate. No one wants to seem greedy, but also no one wants to get stuck with the cosmic leftovers. It's like splitting up chores after the apocalypse. Zeus, of course, speaks first. His voice rolls out with all the subtlety of a thunderclap, claiming the sky as if he were simply correcting a mistake the universe made by not giving it to him outright. Poseidon gestures vaguely toward the sea. "I'll take that," he says, like he's ordering fish at a market. And Hades, well, he doesn't object, doesn't raise his voice. He just listens. The lot falls to him, not rigged, not forced, just chosen, maybe. Or maybe he just drew the short stick. Historians still argue whether this was a fair distribution or a subtle trick. Some fringe theories whisper that Zeus and Poseidon worked out their picks in advance, conveniently leaving Hades with the one place no one else wanted. Others claim Hades accepted the underworld willingly, because he was the only one wise enough to understand what real power looked like. Permanence. Everyone dies. Eventually, they all come to him. You glance at Hades now. He says nothing, but there's something about the way he stands, a kind of dignity, like someone who knows he'll outlast every party, every storm, every headline. The underworld isn't a demotion. It's a guarantee. You follow the brothers as they symbolically draw the lines of their realms. The sea sloshes behind Poseidon, new and wild, like a toddler with a squirt gun. The sky above Zeus crackles dramatically, because of course it does. And beneath their feet, cracks begin to shimmer with soft, shadowy light. The world below has opened its eyes. There's a story, probably apocryphal, definitely dramatic, of how the gods used dice to divide their kingdoms. Ancient gambling with the fate of the universe. No one ever mentions if the dice were loaded. Still, you get the sense that Hades didn't protest because he already saw what was coming. He wasn't interested in fleeting glory. He didn't need applause or giant statues or themed festivals. He needed a domain where he could work in peace, somewhere no one else would interrupt him unless absolutely necessary. That domain was death. You drift with him now, away from his brothers, as they start to squabble over temples and sacrifices and whether storm god gets more holidays than ocean god. Hades doesn't care. He walks down, always down. There's something oddly calming about it. The way his footsteps echo, the way the earth doesn't resist him. It just parts. It lets him through, like it knows he belongs. You pause as Hades reaches the threshold of what will become the underworld proper. It's not quite there yet. Just a cavernous space filled with shifting shadows and faint whispers, like the place dreams go when they're halfway between sleep and memory. The souls aren't arriving yet, but soon they will. And when they do, there must be rules. You watch Hades begin to organize, quietly, without fanfare. He doesn't summon storm clouds or create whirlpools. He just starts building structure from silence. There's an odd, quirky tidbit buried in a fragment of ancient text. Supposedly, Hades was the first to suggest that mortals be judged after death. Not punished, not tormented, just judged. Fairly, based on their actions. No bribes, no loopholes, no charming your way past a divine bouncer. Just justice, cold and calm. The idea was radical. Olympus ran on favoritism, melodrama, and whatever mood Zeus happened to be in after breakfast. But Hades? He wanted order. You look up and notice the first shape forming in the shadows. A throne. Simple. Stone. Unadorned. There's no ceremony. Hades doesn't sit like a king. He settles like a man who's realized he'll be here for a very long time. A faint growl echoes from somewhere deep below. You can just make out the shape of something massive. Fur, teeth, too many eyes. Cerberus, in his earliest form, yawns. He's not scary yet, just large. A puppy with bad dreams and a destiny. Meanwhile, back above ground, no one really talks about Hades anymore. Zeus gets temples. Poseidon gets sailors crying his name in the middle of storms. Hades? People avoid saying his name at dinner parties. That's fine. He prefers it that way. Still, the gods visit from time to time, some with complaints, some with requests. No one stays long. The underworld isn't made for guests. You follow Hades deeper into his kingdom as it slowly takes shape around him, rivers carving themselves, judges arriving one by one, and a strange little boat tethered to a foggy shore where no one yet waits. It's not glamorous work, but it's essential. And Hades doesn't flinch, because while his brothers perform for crowds and thunder at the sky, he builds something quieter, heavier, and far more permanent. You can almost hear it. Heartbeats slowing, stories ending, footsteps echoing down a corridor with no exit sign. And at the end of it all, there he is, waiting. You're deeper now, properly beneath everything. The world above is a memory, muffled like a conversation in the next room. Down here, in the underworld, time stretches differently. It doesn't tick, it hums. And Hades? He's still busy decorating, not with flowers, not with sunlight, definitely not with motivational mosaics. But he's building something remarkable all the same. A realm designed to contain everything that ever was, without a single scream out of place. You walk beside him through the newly formed corridors. They're vast but not cold, shadowed but not empty. It feels like wandering through the hallways of an eternal library, only instead of books, the shelves are filled with lives. The architecture is, well, let's call it understated. Nothing flashy, just endless winding paths, smooth stone chambers, and ceiling vaults that seem to breathe ever so slightly. No banners, no welcome signs, just functionality. Hades is designing not for comfort, but for scale, for longevity. You pass through a vast antechamber, and he gestures quietly. This is where judgment will happen, not courtroom drama, no wigs, no gavels, just 3 silent judges, Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Iacchus, each chosen for wisdom, fairness, and a general ability to avoid god-tier tantrums. Historians still argue whether Hades himself was ever involved in the judging process. Some depictions show him as a passive ruler, more concerned with logistics than morality. Others insist he kept close watch, especially on the shady characters who tried to cheat death more than once. Looking at you, Sisyphus. But today, he's focused on layout. Which river goes where? Where do the good souls rest? Where do the not-so-good ones reflect? How do you keep ghosts from wandering into the wrong district? Quirky fact incoming. The Greeks believed in multiple regions within the underworld. There was asphodel meadows for the average folks. Think of it like the ancient version of a never-ending Tuesday afternoon. Elysium for the blessed few, VIP lounge, sun-kissed eternity, and Tartarus for the absolute worst, eternal time out, but make it mythic. Hades isn't judging, he's sorting. That's his vibe. He's the divine manager of posthumous logistics. And it shows. He creates the rivers, Styx, Lethe, Acheron, Quietest, and Phlegethon. Each one does something different. One makes you forget. One is used for sacred oaths. One is just sad. Quietest sounds like it cries at its own reflection, honestly. You stand with Hades on the banks of the Styx. It's slow and dark, but not ominous. It's dignified. Charon the ferryman hasn't shown up yet. He's still on his lunch break, probably. But soon, he'll be here to take the newly dead across, charging his standard oboe fare. No coin, no ride. Bureaucracy, even in death. Why a river? You ask silently, because talking feels loud down here. And the underworld seems to answer, rivers move, so must souls. One odd little tidbit the Greeks believed. Ghosts who hadn't been buried properly would wander aimlessly, unable to cross. It wasn't just superstition, it was social anxiety projected onto the afterlife. No funeral, no peace. People feared becoming unsorted, forgotten, floating forever on the wrong side of Lethe. You pass what will eventually be Cerberus's den. It's still a half-built archway with scratch marks in the stone, as though the beast is already pacing, waiting to be real. Hades pauses here. Pets are important. Cerberus isn't a monster. He's a function, a gatekeeper. 3 heads, sure, but each one more curious than cruel. His job isn't to hurt the dead. It's to keep the living out. And if the occasional hero tries to sneak past, well, good luck explaining that to the middle head. You turn a corner and enter a smaller chamber, oddly warm. A place for lost things, misplaced memories, songs that no one alive remembers, names worn thin by centuries of wind and war. Hades keeps them here. Not because he's sentimental, though maybe he is, a little, but because someone has to. It's not glorious work. No one sings hymns to the guy who files the forgotten souls. But someone has to sweep up after the universe. Someone has to turn entropy into administration. There's no throne room like on Olympus, no banquet halls. Hades doesn't do peacocks or gold leaf ceilings. He has a single wide stone seat at the center of it all. Low to the ground, grounded, unmoving. He doesn't rise to greet guests. They come to him, already bowed by the weight of their own lives. And when the world above goes to war, when heroes die, when philosophers pass on or kings fall from grace, they all eventually make their way here. There's a calmness to it, even in all its strangeness. You sit beside him for a moment, listening. There's no silence, like the underworld's silence. It isn't empty. It's full. Of echoes, of sighs, of final words. You could spend an eternity here and never hear the same story twice. Hades leans back. Not smug, not brooding, just tired, but also patient. He's built something that doesn't need applause to matter. A place where even the forgotten get sorted. A realm that doesn't chase headlines. You wonder if he ever wanted more. A temple, maybe. A chariot. A thunderbolt or two. But then you remember. He didn't lose the sky or the sea. He claimed everything beneath. You're still down here, deep within the folds of a realm that no one really visits. You don't visit the underworld. You arrive, and you rarely leave. Unless, of course, you're married to the guy in charge. You hear the soft rustle of movement before you see her. Persephone. She enters like a breeze that forgot it wasn't supposed to be in this room. Bright, living, slightly inconvenient for the overall aesthetic. And suddenly, the underworld has a floral problem. Hades watches her approach with that same expression he always wears. Stillness, maybe resignation, or possibly admiration, wrapped in several layers of emotional encryption. He doesn't say much. He rarely does. But you can tell. He notices every step she takes, every petal that accidentally sprouts when she walks past a dead patch of ground. They're not exactly a power couple. More like an opposites attract situation that spiraled into one of mythology's most infamous custody arrangements. You float beside Hades as Persephone glances around, clearly thinking, this place could use a skylight. She doesn't say it out loud, but the way she arranges her hair like a crown of poppies suggests she's already mentally redecorating. Let's pause a second. Because here's the thing. This story is usually told as a kidnapping. And yes, the myths do say that Hades took her. That the earth split open and she was swallowed into shadow while picking flowers. That her mother, Demeter, goddess of the harvest, lost her entire maternal mind and wintered the world in protest. But scholars still debate whether this tale is as simple as abduction. Some fringe interpretations frame it as a symbolic transition, a rite of passage. A maiden becomes a queen, the death of innocence, the birth of maturity. Or, less romantically, a very complicated elopement with poor communication and zero paperwork. Still, from Hades's perspective, things are about to get much, much louder. You follow the couple through the chambers. Persephone hums under her breath, a sound the underworld hasn't heard in eons. Flowers bloom and wither behind her in polite confusion. Ghosts pause, unsure whether to bow or wave. You glance at Hades. He isn't irritated, just slightly recalibrated. Like someone who planned on reading alone all evening and now there's a house guest rearranging the furniture. But here's the twist. He doesn't send her away. He offers her a throne. He lets her stay. And not just as a visitor. He crowns her queen of the underworld. Equal, powerful, a figure to be reckoned with, not a captive, a co-ruler. And yet, the living world disagrees. Above ground, Demeter is spiraling. Crops fail. Fields shrivel. Humans cry out. Winter, the first real winter, covers the land like a stubborn metaphor. No one's harvesting anything until her daughter comes home. Eventually, a compromise is reached. Classic divine arbitration. Persephone will spend part of the year with her mother and part with Hades. 6 months up, 6 months down, spring and summer above, autumn and winter below. The myth becomes a calendar. The drama becomes agriculture. You watch the first departure. It's awkward. Hades doesn't say goodbye. Persephone doesn't wave. But when she's gone, the silence in the underworld becomes a little heavier. It's hard to say whether Hades is sad. Gods don't cry, not officially, but the shadows thicken when she leaves. Cerberus sighs more audibly. The rivers grow sluggish. But when she returns, you see it in the tiniest details. The way he's already cleared her seat beside the throne. The way the dead seem to stir, not out of fear, but curiosity. The way even Lethe ripples a little more brightly. There's a peculiar historical tidbit hidden in certain ancient rites. In some versions, Persephone is actually more feared than Hades. While he rules steadily, she judges swiftly. She can send souls to Tartarus with a glance. Hades may host the dead, but Persephone? She keeps them in line. You begin to notice her influence on the underworld. Colors that weren't there before. A garden. Yes, an actual one, growing in a secluded courtyard. It's not Eden, but it's something. Pomegranate trees, mostly. Of course. You pass by one of them. Low-hanging fruit. Glossy, dark red. You consider taking one, and instantly Hades raises an eyebrow. Not angry, just disappointed. Like a librarian who's seen too many people dog-ear pages. You remember the story. Persephone ate just a few seeds. Some versions say 6, others say 1. But it was enough. Eating food from the underworld binds you to it. A rule Hades didn't invent, but one he definitely didn't mention before lunch. He doesn't lie. He just lets the fine print speak for itself. And so, every year, Persephone returns. It's not a happy ending, but it's not a tragedy either. It's seasonal. Some scholars believe the myth is more about balance than romance. Life and death, growth and decay. You and your complicated relationship with houseplants. Whatever the truth, you walk with Hades now through a realm that's slightly less cold than it was before. Persephone hums in the distance. The dead are dreaming. And the god of the underworld, the quietest of them all, allows a little music into his home. Just a little. He has to keep up appearances after all. You're drifting now along the banks of the Acheron, a river that sounds like it gargles despair for breakfast. The waters lap softly at the shore, and for a moment, everything feels oddly administrative. Because here's what you might not expect about the underworld. It runs on paperwork. Not literal parchment and quills, perhaps, but cosmic red tape. Endless soul traffic. A bureaucracy thicker than the river Styx. And at the heart of it all, standing behind the celestial equivalent of a front desk with one exhausted eyebrow permanently raised, is Hades. You watch as he handles it all. The newly arrived souls, the confused spirits who forgot their obols, the half-mummified heroes still insisting they're alive. It's a full-time job. And unlike the other gods, Hades doesn't get to leave it behind just because a mortal sneezed in the right temple. Enter Charon, the ferryman. He's late. Again. His boat scrapes into the shore like a hungover gondola, and he sighs through his nostrils as if existence itself is mildly disappointing. Name, he grumbles to the nearest ghost. The ghost mumbles something about being a minor bard and tries to pay in buttons. You watch Hades intervene, not harshly, but firmly. Rules are rules. No coin, no passage. It's not cruelty, it's process. Here's a quirky little historical tidbit for you. The Greeks were so serious about this fairy fair that people used to bury their dead with coins under the tongue or on the eyes, just so they wouldn't get stranded. Some families even kept a stash of underworld change at home, just in case. Talk about long-term planning. Back at the dock, Hades straightens the line. Charon rolls his eyes but complies. Cerberus gives a low, affirming growl. The gears of death grind on, steadily, eternally. Then it happens. A bard shows up. Not just any bard. Orpheus. You've heard the story. Everyone has. He arrives with his lyre and his grief, clutching a melody and a hope that maybe, just maybe, music can override mortality. And to be honest, for a moment, it almost works. You float beside Hades as Orpheus plays. The walls weep, the rivers pause, even the judges lean forward in silence. It's that beautiful. Hades closes his eyes. He doesn't smile, but he listens. And, against every regulation, against the very grain of eternity, he agrees. Eurydice may leave with Orpheus. One condition: he can't look back until they're out. Spoiler alert, he looks back. But in that moment, Hades proved something. He's not heartless. He's just bound by rules older than he is. You can bend the structure, but you can't break it. Historians still argue whether Hades wanted to say yes, or whether Persephone nudged him under the table. Either way, he gave something he rarely does: a second chance. You wander now through one of the quieter corridors of the underworld, the return department. Not many come this way. Some try to escape, of course. Heroes, mostly. Dead ones who think they can outwit fate. Hades always knows. But he lets the trials play out. There's no real harm in letting Heracles wrestle Cerberus for a bit. The beast likes the exercise. You pass a wall covered in strange tally marks. Every soul accounted for. Every return noted. Every escape temporary. You notice Hades muttering softly to himself. Not curses, not prayers, just names. He remembers them all. In a dusty chamber behind the judging hall, you discover the weirdest thing so far: a waiting room. An actual dead person waiting room. Benches, ancient graffiti carved into the walls. Charon smells like river feet. And a sense that time has folded in on itself while souls await processing. Some scholars believe this room was inspired by real-world Athenian bureaucracy, that the mythological underworld mirrored the world of the living more than most want to admit. After all, what's more eternal than the inefficiency of paperwork? And yet, Hades never falters. He keeps the records, oversees the trials, answers the same questions from confused ghosts every day. No throne room tantrums, no lightning bolt diplomacy, just quiet competence. You sit beside him now as the dead file in. A nobleman who insists he's not that dead. A pirate who brought foreign coins and is trying to bribe Charon with vibes. A peasant woman who says she's ready, actually, thank you. Hades treats them all the same. You begin to realize something. This isn't just a kingdom. It's a service, an eternal processing center for the human condition. And Hades? He's less like a king and more like a librarian of souls, a DMV clerk for eternity, a border patrol agent with infinite patience and no coffee breaks. He doesn't seek glory. He doesn't punish needlessly. He simply makes sure that death, your death, my death, matters, that it's recorded, honored, sorted. You stand beside him as he watches the river Lethe swirl. Its waters glimmer faintly with forgotten birthdays, lost songs, and the names of people you almost remembered. And still, he keeps count. You're following Hades again, but this time, he's leaving. Not in a dramatic exit, not with trumpet blasts or fiery wheels. He simply lifts a helmet, slips it over his head, and vanishes. Well, you can still see him, because bedtime rules override magic ones. But to the rest of the world, poof, gone. This is no ordinary helmet. It's the cap of invisibility, also called the Helm of Darkness. Forged by the Cyclopes, it's one of the divine tools crafted during the Titanomachy, the war between the Olympians and their charmingly unpleasant predecessors, the Titans. Hades didn't make much noise during that war. Zeus threw thunderbolts like candy at a parade. Poseidon stirred the seas until Atlantis probably just gave up and sank. But Hades? He slipped between shadows, popped in and out of enemy strongholds, and generally made the Titans feel like they were losing a fight against a haunted breeze. Historians still debate whether Hades ever wanted to fight in the Titanomachy at all. Some suggest he preferred neutrality. Others say he was critical to the war's outcome. But what everyone agrees on? That helmet changed the game. You trail him now across battlefields frozen in myth. Titans roar in the distance, huge and furious, but Hades moves like a whisper across the landscape, unseen, unstoppable, not through brute force, but by avoiding detection entirely. Kind of like when you try to sneak past your boss on a Friday afternoon. There's a quirky footnote from a late Hellenistic poet who claimed that Hades used the helmet once to sneak into a mortal's dream, not to deliver a message or revelation, but simply to borrow their dog. No one takes that seriously, but honestly, you wouldn't put it past him. Now, back to the helmet. Unlike other divine items, Zeus's lightning bolts, Poseidon's trident, Hades doesn't keep his magical gear on display. He returns the helmet after each use, storing it somewhere deep in the underworld, possibly in a drawer labeled "for emergencies only." He doesn't flaunt it. He just uses it. You watch him appear again on the battlefield as the Titans finally fall. He's not posing. He's not collecting trophies. He just gives the helmet a small nod of gratitude and heads back down. No parade, no party. Meanwhile, Olympus is popping off. The new gods are divvying up honors, assigning responsibilities, and staging power selfies on top of clouds. But Hades? He returns to his realm before the celebration even begins. This is a recurring theme, by the way. He helps just enough. Then he leaves. You drift with him now through a rare return trip to the surface, this time not for war, but for reasons unclear. He passes unseen through cities built on top of forgotten tombs. He listens to mortals pray to other gods. He hears farmers thank Zeus for rain, sailors beg Poseidon for mercy, and even shepherds whisper love letters to Apollo. No one prays to Hades. Well, that's not quite true. Some do, but not out loud, not during the day, not in public. You spot a small shrine behind someone's house, mud brick, overgrown with ivy. A single, half-melted offering sits in a cracked bowl. Not much, but it's sincere. A whisper of respect to the God who sees everyone, eventually. There's a strange little detail buried in old records. People used to avert their faces when speaking of Hades, or touch the ground as a subtle sign of deference. Not fear, respect. Reverence wrapped in caution. Even his name, Hades, wasn't always used directly. Sometimes he was just the unseen one, or the receiver. Like a cosmic airport terminal that never closes. You follow him into another rare surface visit. A hero is being born. Not dying, born. And Hades, for reasons unknown, shows up to watch. Maybe he's curious. Maybe he's checking the schedule for future arrivals. Or maybe, just maybe, he likes to see beginnings once in a while. He doesn't speak. He just watches. A quiet silhouette in the doorway, unseen, unmentioned. And when the baby cries its first breath, Hades exhales softly and disappears again into the earth. There's something peaceful about it. He never overstays. He never imposes. He just checks in on the living world like someone who used to live in your neighborhood but moved to a quieter street and occasionally walks by to see if your garden's doing okay. You trail him back down now, past the shifting stone, the groaning roots, the rivers of memory and fire and mourning. He slips through the layers like he belongs to them, which, of course, he does. There's one last detour before home, a dream. A mortal dreaming of the dead, lost in a labyrinth of memory and guilt. And Hades visits, not to chastise, not to scare, but to place one small, warm hand on the dreamer's shoulder, just for a moment, just to say, I remember them too. Then he's gone again. You arrive back at his throne, still undecorated, still low to the ground, still solid. Cerberus greets him with a wag of 3 tails. A skeletal bird squawks once and promptly falls asleep on a beam overhead. Somewhere, Persephone is tending to a garden of nocturnal lilies that bloom only in silence. And Hades sits. His helmet is tucked away. His invisibility no longer needed. After all, down here, everyone already knows he's watching. You're standing now in a hall that hums with tension, not the drama of Olympus, all thunder and theatrics, but the quieter, sharper sting of family drama that's been aging underground like a bitter bottle of wine. Yes, even in the underworld, there are sibling issues. Hades sits at the head of a long stone table. He's not eating. No one eats down here. But the table is set, a symbolic gesture. 1 seat for each of the big 3. 1 empty seat for Hestia, who politely declined the invitation, as usual. 1 spot for Demeter, who's still not over the whole "you took my daughter underground" thing. And 1 awkwardly oversized chair labeled Zeus, because of course it is. And here they come now, gliding down from Olympus like they own the place. Zeus enters first, radiating arrogance, glittering in gold, the type of brother who brings his own echo just in case no one claps. He claps Hades on the back like they're best friends, as if centuries of passive-aggressive divine memos haven't passed between them. Poseidon follows, trailing a fine mist and smelling faintly of salt and self-importance. He nods coolly, offers a grunt in place of an apology for that time he accidentally flooded half a necropolis, and takes his seat like he's doing Hades a favor. You stand quietly by, sensing the tension vibrating through the obsidian walls. The brothers don't yell, not here. But oh, the silence is sharp. Historians still argue whether these gatherings ever happened. Some ancient playwrights imagined them as grand councils. Others say the three avoided each other whenever possible, preferring long-distance siblinghood. But in your dreamlike drift through this tale, you're witnessing one of the rare moments they actually meet. What do they argue about? Everything and nothing. Zeus thinks Hades should update the aesthetic of the underworld. Brighter lighting, maybe a few musical fountains. Poseidon complains that too many drowned souls are skipping his watery domain and heading straight below. I need a processing system, he grumbles. It's chaos in the Mariana Trench. Hades listens. Then, in his usual fashion, says exactly one sentence. Something like, "When you stop making messes, I'll stop cleaning them." A burn, delivered cold. You pass through a different room now, filled with records, tablets, scrolls, stones, lists of sacrifices, mortals who remembered Hades. Most are small offerings, black rams, pomegranates, the occasional funeral hymn hummed at dusk. Nothing like the temples Zeus demands or the statues Poseidon commissions. There's a quirky record scratched into a second-century urn. A small town accidentally threw a festival in Hades' name, mistaking him for another god with a similar-sounding title. No lightning, no curses. Just one confused, slightly touched deity who probably thought, that was nice. But most of the time, Hades is left out. You float above a mortal city now, hearing the prayers. Zeus, bring rain. Poseidon, calm the sea. Apollo, light our way. Never Hades, thank you for keeping my grandmother safe on the other side. The underworld doesn't get applause, but it also doesn't have to deal with mortal requests every 5 minutes. That might be the trade-off. Back underground, Hades receives another divine visitor. Not a brother this time, but Hermes, the messenger, the psychopomp, the god who guides souls from the land of the living to the realm of the dead. Their relationship is oddly friendly. Hermes talks too much. Hades barely responds. But they understand each other. You listen in as Hermes delivers a report. 2 mortals cheated death again. One faked a funeral. The other made a deal with Thanatos and ran off. Hades doesn't shout. He doesn't send fire or thunder. He simply marks their names in the ledger with a faint scratch. They'll be back, he murmurs. And they always are. There's an old philosophical idea buried in early myth, possibly Orphic in origin, that Hades isn't a punisher, but a mirror. That souls enter his domain and encounter not judgment, but their own unedited truth. You wander now into a quiet chamber lined with mirrors that reflect not your body, but your life. Tiny flashes of decisions, regrets, kindnesses, pettiness. Nothing dramatic. Just you. One soul stares too long and crumbles. Another laughs. Another sighs and walks on. Hades oversees it all with the patience of someone who's seen billions of endings and knows none of them are truly unique. Later, you watch as a quarrel breaks out between gods, some minor deities arguing about border regions. One threatens to unleash curses. Another invokes Zeus's name. The third just cries. And Hades? He clears his throat. The room stills instantly, because while no one fears his temper, everyone respects his silence. He rarely speaks in Olympus, but when he does, everyone listens. Even Zeus. Especially Zeus. Because in the end, no matter how divine they are, all gods know, they'll fade. And when they do, it won't be to the sea or sky or stars. It'll be here. To him. You return now to his throne, low and worn smooth at the edges. Persephone is back for her season, arranging night-blooming orchids in a vase made from forgotten obsidian. Cerberus yawns. The scroll of names grows a few inches longer, and Hades, the quietest of them all, keeps watching. You're walking now through the oldest parts of the Underworld, the places even the gods have mostly forgotten. There's no signage, no glowing exit arrows, just ancient stone and echoes that smell faintly of dust and memory. The walls here don't echo with cries or whispers. They hum. Low, steady, like a lullaby hummed by the earth itself. Hades moves through it without hesitation. You follow his steps, careful not to trip over the bones of time. This is where the primordials once roamed. Before Zeus, before the Titans, before even time itself had a proper calendar, the cosmos belonged to other forces. Chaos, Nyx, Erebus, Gaia. Not gods, really. More like moods with personalities. And down here, in this long-forgotten under-basement of the afterlife, their fingerprints still linger. Hades pauses before a deep chasm. No bridge, no railing, just a gentle drop into infinite black. It's Tartarus. Not the punishment realm, the Tartarus, the entity. The abyss that existed before Olympus was even a glimmer in the sky. Historians still argue whether Hades has authority over Tartarus or merely proximity. Some say it operates on its own rules, housing cosmic prisoners like Kronos and Typhon. Others believe Hades maintains a polite landlord-tenant agreement with the abyss. Don't let the Titans out, and I'll stay out of your business. Either way, he never looks directly into it. That's probably wise. You glance down, and for a moment, you think you see a massive eye open, then blink, then vanish. Nope, not today, thank you. You move on with Hades as he navigates these forgotten tunnels. He pauses occasionally at strange relics, a skeletal harp carved from starlight, a throne turned to salt, a mural of a god no one remembers. This is the storage closet of creation. And Hades? He's the only one with a key. You pass a doorway sealed with vines, Persephone's touch, clearly. A ward, maybe, or a warning. You wonder what's behind it. There's a quirky footnote in an Orphic hymn about how the underworld contains every idea ever abandoned, every invention never made, every poem never written down. You walk past a pile of things that feel like dreams someone almost had. A staircase winds upward suddenly, narrow and damp. Hades climbs without effort. You follow, slowly. This passage, he tells you with a glance, leads to the fields of asphodel. You emerge into a vast, misty plain. Not heaven, not hell. Just meh. This is where most souls end up. Not the heroic ones who earned Elysium, nor the terrible ones dragged to Tartarus. These are the ordinary souls. Farmers, bakers, people who returned a borrowed bowl but forgot to say thank you. They walk quietly here, not sad, just dimmed, like candles that never quite blew out. You sit beside one, a woman who once invented a recipe no one remembers. She hums it under her breath. Hades listens for a moment, then nods, almost imperceptibly. He sees them, even here, especially here. This is where his quiet power lives, not in punishment, but in witnessing. No one else remembers these lives, but Hades does. There's something oddly comforting about it. You continue past the meadows and into the Elysian fields. They're not golden and loud like you expected. They're peaceful, soft, like the best nap you've ever had, stretched across eternity. Here, the few heroes, poets, and philosophers who made it rest, not in triumph, but in ease. Achilles lies beneath a fig tree, softly muttering about his foot. Sappho reclines on a breeze, rewriting verses. Socrates is arguing with a boulder who refuses to respond. Hades never lingers here, not because he's unwelcome, but because he doesn't need to. His work is down below, in the forgotten corners, with the ones no one else celebrates. You return now to the gates, where Cerberus snoozes, his paws twitching as if chasing something in a dream. Hermes has just arrived, dropping off a batch of newly departed. He and Hades exchange a nod. No small talk today. Too many names. One ghost, freshly unwrapped from life, stares at Hades with wide eyes. "Are you going to judge me?" she asks. "No," he replies, voice like stone smoothed by water. "You already did that yourself." She nods slowly, follows Hermes toward the boat. There's a peculiar story found in the scrolls of Pindar, one that claims Hades once had a soft spot for inventors, that he personally escorted the soul of Daedalus to Elysium, not for his inventions, but for surviving long enough to regret them. You wonder if it's true. You wonder if it matters. The underworld doesn't run on truth so much as memory, and in memory, everything gets a little softer around the edges. You sit now at the edge of Lethe, the river of forgetting. Souls line up to drink and dissolve their burdens. Some hesitate. Some gulp eagerly. A few try to take just a sip, as if memory comes with a tasting menu. Hades watches quietly. He doesn't interfere. This is their choice. This is their release. You look at him now, really look. The God who doesn't ask for worship, who doesn't send omens, who doesn't speak unless it matters. He governs not with fire or fury, but with endurance, because in the end, all things come to him, not as punishment, but as part of the natural order, and he receives them, all of them, even you. Eventually, you're back at the river again, but not just any river. This time, it's the Lethe, the softest of the five, the one that asks you gently to let go. It doesn't roar like the Styx or weep like Quietest. It simply trickles, humming a lullaby of amnesia. And it's busy. Souls gather here, queuing like people at a water fountain, but instead of thirst, they come to forget. Forget who they were, what they did, the shape of their name. And over all of this, standing as still as a sundial at midnight, is Hades. You're not sure how long he's been here. Maybe hours, maybe centuries. Time kneels differently in the underworld. It doesn't march, it drifts, like a dream that forgot to end. Today, Hades is quiet, even more than usual. You watch him observe the souls as they drink, one by one, vanishing just a little with every sip. A soldier forgets the war. A widow forgets the waiting. A king forgets the crown that meant nothing down here. Then, a child steps forward. She hesitates, looks up at Hades. Will it hurt? He doesn't lie. Only at first. She nods, drinks, and the underworld exhales. There's an obscure detail tucked into a later Neoplatonic commentary, one that says Lethe isn't just about forgetting. It's a filter. It removes not just memory, but weight, the unbearable bits, the too sharp regrets, like shaking the dust off your soul before stepping into a clean, quiet room. Hades, curiously, never drinks from it. You wonder if he's not allowed, or if he just chooses to remember. Every soul, every story, even the awkward ones. You drift with him now into the hall of rebirth, a chamber very few ever visit. This is where things begin again, not for all souls, just the ones marked for return. Reincarnation isn't a universal policy. It's a lottery, a strange, selective cosmic shuffle. And Hades oversees the drawing of lots. A goat herder becomes a poet. A warrior becomes a lark. A tyrant becomes a snail. Balance, as always, is maintained. You pass a soul just chosen to return. He looks surprised. I just got used to being dead, he mutters. Hades shrugs. Then you'll be better at living this time. There's a quirky myth, rarely told these days, that says Hades sometimes whispers into the ear of a reborn child. Just a word or two. Not commands, not prophecies, just something small, like a memory of water or a dream of a name. No one remembers it consciously, but maybe it's what makes babies laugh in their sleep. You follow the god back to the throne chamber. Persephone is gone again. Her time above has come. The garden looks slightly wilted, holding its breath for spring. Cerberus lies curled in the corner, all three heads snoring in round-robin rhythm. One of them twitches and mumbles something about squirrels. And Hades sits. He's reviewing scrolls, lists, names. You catch glimpses as he works. Some names are written boldly, in sweeping divine script. Others are barely legible, fading at the edges. But none are missing. That's the thing. No one gets skipped. You float through another corridor now, a gallery of endings. Here, images flicker like candlelight along the walls. A grandmother's final smile, a soldier's last breath, a philosopher's last unfinished sentence. Nothing showy, just real. No dramatics, just closure. Hades walks slowly through this space, not as a ruler, but as a witness. This is perhaps the most profound part of his domain. He doesn't erase life. He honors it. He preserves its ending as something sacred, not something to be feared, but something to be held. There's a historical debate here. Did the Greeks see Hades as a figure of fear, or simply inevitability? Was he avoided because he was cruel, or because he was true? You begin to suspect the latter, because here's the secret no one tells you in the myths. Hades doesn't want your worship. He wants your peace. He doesn't demand temples or fanfare or firstborn sacrifices. Looking at you, ancient cults. He just wants the dead to rest, and the living to remember that nothing truly disappears. It just changes rooms. You pause by the river Styx once more. It still moves slowly, dragging time behind it like a lazy tide. Oaths are made here. Big ones. Divine promises that can't be broken. You watch as a minor god dips a hand into the Styx, swearing loyalty. It burns. Just a little. And Hades. He's the enforcer. If you swear on this river and break your word, Hades doesn't hurl fire or summon beasts. He just remembers. And you will return to explain yourself. You stand now on the edge of his realm, not to leave, but to understand it fully, to feel what it means to be in a place where time is folded, memory is filtered, and even silence has a name. And Hades, silent, patient Hades, stands beside you. He doesn't speak, but if he did, maybe he'd say, "You were never alone." You're walking now through one of the softest, strangest corners of the underworld, a space that doesn't quite look like the others. Here, the walls aren't carved stone or twisted roots. They're bookshelves. Miles of them. Ancient tomes, scrolls, clay tablets, waxed slates, and things with writing so old it predates sound. This is the Library of the Dead. Not a myth you've probably heard, but one whispered by mystics, insomniacs, and archaeologists who've stared too long into darkness. And guess who's the librarian? That's right. Hades moves among the shelves like someone who's been reshelving eternity for longer than he cares to admit. No cart, no card catalog, just memory. You trail him down one row. Unfinished love letters. Another, unspoken regrets. A particularly dusty corner labeled "Jokes Told Too Late." He pauses, pulls out a clay tablet, reads a few words silently, and slips it back with something close to a smile. Not all these volumes are sad, though. Some are beautiful. Entire aisles filled with children's first words, last hugs between old friends, and the quietest moments that no one noticed but somehow mattered. There's a scroll titled, "A Shoemaker Once Sang to His Cat." It's 600 lines long. You begin to realize death doesn't erase life. It curates it. And Hades? He's the head curator. There's an obscure myth, found only in a fragment from a lost philosopher, that Hades collects not souls, but stories. That what truly crosses the river Styx isn't the person, but the pattern they left behind. A memory. A ripple. Maybe that's why he's so quiet. Because he's constantly listening. You pass a table where a few shades sit, quietly rereading moments from their lives. A mother cradles the memory of a rainy morning. A man chuckles at an old argument that seems silly now. No one speaks. The silence is respectful. But this place? It isn't for punishment. It's for remembering. Gently, slowly, before letting go. You step into another room. A vault, this time. It's colder here. Not in temperature, but in atmosphere. This is where Hades stores the things too sharp to shelve openly. Unspoken truths. Confessions whispered into pillows. Memories of harm that people tried to forget, but couldn't. Even in the afterlife, not everything is simple. Hades opens one drawer. A small, trembling whisper escapes. Just the word, sorry. He closes it gently, like tucking in a child who had a nightmare. You wander further and find something odd. A shelf with empty books. No titles, no pages. Just potential. These are the lives that ended too early. The almosts. The should-have-beens. Hades keeps them too. He doesn't rewrite them. He just holds them in silence, because even unfinished lives deserve a place on the shelf. You follow him back into the main hall. There's a stone desk near the entrance, cluttered with tokens and artifacts. A cracked wedding ring, a pencil stub, a crumpled receipt from a cafe that no longer exists. Each one holds a universe. Hades picks up the pencil and turns it over once, as if remembering the hands that held it, then sets it down with care. It's easy to forget. He's not just the god of the dead. He's the god of the invisible, the quiet, the overlooked. Mortals call him the unseen one, not because he's hiding, but because he represents everything that slips past our eyes, everything we forget, until it's too late. You take a moment to absorb the stillness of the library. There's a tension here, not painful, just profound. Like sitting at the edge of a deep lake and knowing that beneath the surface are stories that no one alive will ever hear. And Hades? He knows them all. You ask, softly, whether it ever overwhelms him. He doesn't answer, but he gently taps a shelf labeled "Laughter that echoed longer than expected." And that feels like a yes. There's an unusual scholarly theory, rare, fringe, and probably not in any textbook, that Hades laughs sometimes, that he finds joy in the strange, the subtle, that he once laughed for 10 minutes straight at a mortal who accidentally cursed at their own reflection, not cruelly, just fondly. You walk now toward the exit of the library, if such a thing exists. As you pass, a breeze flips open a page on a worn-out book. You glance down. It's your name, and beneath it, a single paragraph. It's not flashy, it's not epic, but it's yours. Hades nods. You'll come back to it someday, but not yet, not tonight. You're gliding now through the darker side of dreams, the ones that don't scare you, but linger. Where sound is muffled, time loops quietly on itself, and the air smells like old stone and violets that bloom only at midnight. You're not lost. Hades is still here, though tonight he walks slower, not tired, just thoughtful. This part of the underworld is different. No grand halls, no judging chambers, just winding corridors, soft torchlight, and walls inscribed with questions. Yes, questions, not answers. Etched in every language the world has ever spoken, and some that never left the breath of God's. Why me? Was it enough? What happens now? You run your fingers along them. Some are shaky, scratched by trembling hands. Others are neat, careful. A few are incomplete, fading into the stone like they never expected to be answered. This is the Hall of Doubt, a place most myths skip because it's not very heroic. But it's human. And Hades? He understands doubt better than anyone. He walks beside you, saying nothing. There are no lectures here, just witness. You pass a soul kneeling before a question. Did they know I loved them? She's been here a long time. Hades doesn't rush her. He just waits nearby. Eventually, she nods to herself and rises. Maybe she doesn't have the answer. Maybe she never will. But she's ready to move on. There's a quirky tale buried in a Roman commentary that says, Hades once sent a message, just one, to the living. Not through dreams or omens, but scratched into the bark of a tree struck by lightning. It read, "You do not have to know. You only have to feel." Scholars think it's a forgery. You're not so sure. You turn a corner and find yourself face to face with one of the stranger features of the underworld. A massive wall of masks. Each one is different. Some are elaborate, others crude. Some smile, some scream. Most are quiet. These are the selves that people wore in life. The roles, the versions, the things we thought we had to be. A king's mask, surprisingly lightweight. A jester's mask, heavy with bite marks on the inside. A mask labeled good enough. Faded almost to transparency. You touch one, and for a moment, you feel the person behind it. Not just what they showed the world, but who they almost were. Hades watches you. He doesn't tell you to take off your own mask. He knows that happens when you're ready. Further in, you reach the garden of quiet things. Yes, there is a garden. It's Persephone's touch, of course. She brought the seeds. Hades cleared the space. Together, they made something that doesn't grow up, but inward. The trees don't reach for the sun. They curl protectively around themselves. The flowers only open when no one's looking. And the fruits? They aren't for eating. They're for remembering. You see souls walk here, pluck a petal, and recall something gentle, a lullaby, a shared look, a moment when they were held and didn't have to explain why. This is what Hades offers, beneath all the darkness, a place where even the smallest feelings matter. You sit now on a smooth stone beneath a tree that hums softly. The leaves shimmer like candlelight. The bark smells like the pages of a book you loved once but can't remember the title of. And Hades sits beside you, not as a god, not as a judge, just as someone who knows the weight of endings. There's a phrase historians argue over, whether the Greeks truly feared Hades or whether they simply feared needing him. After all, he's not the bringer of death. He's just the one who holds it. You glance back at the garden and realize something. It's not a place of mourning. It's a place of acceptance, of softness, of letting yourself be sad without needing to fix it. You watch a soul sit cross-legged in the grass and begin to hum a melody no one's heard in centuries. It's not beautiful exactly, but it's true. And that's enough. Hades closes his eyes and listens. You're near the end of the journey now. The underworld isn't scary anymore. Not to you, because it's not a prison. It's not a punishment. It's a return to memory, to stillness, to self. Hades rises. You follow him once more, winding through chambers that now feel like echoes of your own mind. You arrive back at the center, the throne, the river, the gate, and Hades places a hand on your shoulder. Cool, steady, real. He doesn't speak, but somehow you hear it anyway. You're safe. You're nearing the end now. Not of the underworld, because that never ends, but of this quiet journey through it. And here, in the stillest part of it all, you arrive at something unexpected. A door. Just a door. It doesn't glow. It doesn't hum. It isn't flanked by flaming swords or guarded by sphinxes with riddles. It's small, made of dark wood, and looks like it belongs in a cottage rather than a cosmic realm of the dead. Hades stands beside it. He doesn't open it. He simply waits. You understand. This isn't an exit. It's a threshold. This is where souls cross from the formal, organized part of the underworld to something less structured. Not punishment, not reward, just what comes after. The Greeks didn't describe this part. They weren't sure what lay beyond. Even their myths had to stop somewhere. This was it. The end of language, the edge of story. You turn from the door and follow Hades one last time, this time into a chamber unlike any other, his private quarters. No throne, no guards, just a room, a stone bench, a few books, a pomegranate half-eaten on a plate, a small window looking out into nothing, or everything. And on the wall, painted not in pigment but in shadow, is a single symbol. No one agrees what it means. Some say it's the Greek letter for silence. Others say it's the first letter of the oldest name Hades ever had, one that was only whispered in caves before the gods even had titles. Historians still argue whether it's a symbol of power or a sigil of surrender. But here, it simply is. You sit beside Hades, and for a long while, nothing happens. No speeches, no memories, no monsters. Just the kind of silence that doesn't feel empty. The kind that holds you. You think about how the world has misunderstood him, how the stories painted him in gray because they feared what he represented. Not evil, just endings. But now you see it. He isn't the villain. He's the one who stays when everyone else has left, who holds the light when it flickers, who receives without judging, who watches, remembers, and tends to what the living forget. There's a quirky inscription carved into a Roman tomb. Here lies Lucius, who feared death until he met it, and found it was quieter than he expected. You imagine Hades smiled at that one. Persephone returns as you rise. Her footsteps are soft. She brings spring with her, not to banish the dark, but to balance it. Together, they are not opposites. They are two halves of the same gentle rhythm. You watch as they sit together in the garden room, drinking tea made from night flowers. A conversation passes between them in glances and small smiles. No drama, just being. And you realize something else. The underworld isn't frozen. It changes. Slowly, patiently, quietly, like grief softening over time, like love remembered. You retrace your steps now, past the rivers, past the masks, past the shelves of memory and the gentle ghosts. You feel them nod as you pass, acknowledging your presence, then returning to their quiet eternity. Cerberus lifts one head lazily, offers a soft woof, and closes all three eyes again. The gates part. Hades remains behind, because that's his place. To hold what no one else wants to carry, to make a home out of what everyone else calls an ending. You step across the threshold, but part of you stays behind, not trapped, just remembered, forever held, forever safe.